You know, in 2000, the year 2000, I served on the Child Online Protection Act Commission, a congressional commission looking at online safety and age assurance, and we concluded in our wisdom that the technology wasn't quite there yet. Well, we're getting there. We're finally getting there, so thank you for that. And right, so actually, it's my pleasure to welcome back onto the stage the very busy today Andrew Zack to introduce his panel. Please welcome the new panel.
Great. All right, thank you. Yeah, I hope you're not sick of seeing me up here. This is the last time for the day. Thank you. We're going to continue the age assurance conversation. So I would love to go down the line with introductions and reactions to anything you've heard this afternoon from the opening age assurance video, my conversation with Google, or the open age announcement we just heard. We'll start with Almudena.
Hi everybody. My name is Almudena Lara, and I'm the Policy Director at Ofcom, the UK online regulation, with specific responsibility on child safety. And prior to being at Ofcom, where I've been just over 2 years, I was also working at Google. So it's been a pleasure to come here today and meet a lot of my colleagues. And it's great to see how some of the things that we were working together on in terms of developing age assurance awareness and more age-appropriate experiences for children, it's coming to fruition now. Some of my reflections sitting in the audience. I was here exactly 3 years ago as well, where Google had funded some age assurance research, and that was at the time was the research that was launched on the day. And at the time, if I look back 3 years ago, loads of things seemed impossible at the time, and nobody could believe that we were going to be leaping forward and seeing so much technological change. And I think it is great to see how once you create a need, and I think that there is quite a lot of understanding that there is a need for things to be different, technology comes and tries to solve that need. And some of the things that we have listened and heard today, I think, are definitely helping to move us in that direction.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Jules Polonetsky. I'm CEO of the Future of Privacy Forum. We're a global organization. Our team is in DC, in Nairobi, in India, in Brussels, Singapore, and we have been working at the intersection of privacy and AI and data and kids and policy for 17 years. Many of our members are the chief privacy officers or the senior people dealing with data governance or AI governance at several hundred companies, as well as academics and civil society and folks who perhaps are occasionally looking skeptically at others around the table. But like FOSI, we believe that getting the range of issues, especially when it is all a bit of a nuanced trade-off, as it so often is in kids policy, is necessary to move forward. I think we heard all day today a deep awareness of those nuances and those trade-offs. When I started out, it was very often many of us in our corners. You care about kids, you don't. And things didn't move forward. And I think today, doesn't matter where you sort of sit in this chain, everyone recognizes that doing maybe what they want 100% in the most strict way means that there are going to be trade-offs with other people not being able to use the technology or freedom of speech. But then the people, I think, who live and breathe freedom of speech, I think are recognizing and listening to what happens in local legislatures and parent groups around the world and understanding that at the end of the day, we need to compromise and figure out how to move forward. Excited to sort of hear the KID news. I think the general notion that forcing the question of interoperability is now. We will see age signals, whether we'll be debating who gets them and how many of them and what they mean. But we are going to see a plethora of age signals, obviously because of all of the new national laws, state laws, California, elsewhere. And how we handle those is now the question that is being called. I was pleased to hear Stephen call out the need for a national privacy law, which again gets left by the side. I don't know that Ofcom in the UK could be doing its work if it wasn't built around the structure of the GDPR and then the UK GDPR being in place. I think no matter what smart things we do, federal or state, if we don't have sort of this baseline that covers everybody with definitions in a logical way, it ends up being leaky and faulty. So glad to hear that call out. Glad to hear a number of people call out the point that every single company and every single app having full identity and full age is going to be a bit of a chaotic situation. I think that's going to happen very quickly as developers all will be getting information from the operating systems. And there's a huge range of companies who are not in this room because you're all folks that are dealing with these issues. There's a whole bunch of companies, maybe that weather app that has been mentioned 12 times, but probably 100,000 others who are going to be like, what? Kids, I'm a news service. What do I do with this? I have ad tech, I have stuff, I have comments, and they're not going to know what to do. And so I think we all need to be thinking hard about how to either nuance that, provide the flexibility, or help them understand what they're going to do, or help policymakers understand that that might not be their intended goal.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sydney Saubestre. I work at New America's Open Technology Institute, which is a think tank here in Washington, D.C. I lead our data use and privacy portfolio, but I also used to work more in like the youth well-being space, so I also get called in to do these things. I think that I agree with Almudena and Jules in terms of generally where we are. This used to be something that it felt like there was no solution, no path forward. It's interesting to see how far the conversation has advanced. I often tell people that the reason I got into tech policy was because I really like gray areas, which is very true. I don't like a black and white solution. Once I've solved the problem, I'm like, okay, what next? So I think all these conversations we're having are really interesting. The thing that comes up for me is, so in a past life, I used to do research related to improving foster care for youth who'd been commercially sexually exploited. And so when I think about age assurance, I often think about that, which might seem like a tangent, but it's really rooted in how I think we need to approach these issues, which is making sure that they work for everyone. And a lot of times when we talk about age assurance or age estimation, we're talking about a very specific type of young person who has parents who are relatively digitally literate, who are involved, who even have someone who can affirm that they are the age they are. And I think there's that component that's really important, which is generally that you need to be building these systems so that they work for everyone. I don't believe that restriction without education works. Generally, I think you actually need to make sure that youth and agency is prioritized. And the other component of this, because I do work on privacy, I don't think that privacy and security have to be in opposition, but I do think that they need to be contended with, and there's a lot of questions there that we still have. But really exciting news generally. I'm excited to dig a little bit more into the specs of the announcement that we just heard and to better understand that, and excited for this conversation.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, we have a lot to dive in on. To get a little more specific, 2025 has been a pivot, as we've alluded to, has been a pivotal year for age assurance. Laws going into effect requiring highly effective age assurance, laws requiring verification at specific levels in the technology stack being challenged in court, technological assessments and reviews about the plausible tech options for conducting age assurance, creation and adoption of international standards, certifications, technical innovation from industry big and small. What are some of the key takeaways or key things we've learned this year, in any order?
I'm happy to get us started, since the UK has been leading quite a lot of that charge. So 2025 has been a big year for us. We started the year with the publication in January of the highly effective age assurance guidance. And then in July, 25th of July, what some people have called the AA Day, was when all the requirements to implement highly effective age assurance came into force. And that required porn providers as well as services that allow suicide, self-harm, eating disorder content to put an age gate to prevent children from accessing that type of content. So what we have seen since is that actually the top 10 porn providers in the UK have now an age gate in place. that actually, if you try to get access to some of the top 100 porn providers as well, you are likely to encounter an age gate as well. And what we saw is that in the period right after the implementation of the requirements, so in the month of August, the visits to independent age assurance providers went from 1 million in June to 7.5 million in August. So a clear proof point that actually the law is resulting in more age-aware experiences and more age checks. But like we are not complacent. The 2025 is been a key year, but still loads of things need to happen. In particular, we need to make sure that all of those providers that have a duty to implement highly effective age assurance have an age assurance in place, and we need to make sure that all of them meet the requirements, the highly effective age assurance requirements from Ofcom, as well as in the UK, as Jules said, they are also subject to data privacy law, and they also need to comply with those laws. And I think the other thing that we are seeing, and today has been the proof of it, is that technology is very rapidly evolving. So I think if you asked me a year ago, I wouldn't have guessed that we would be this far in terms of the technology and the technological solutions to help solve the age assurance problem.
One theme that seems to be driven by a lot of the youth-related concerns is personalization. If ads are personalized, we don't want that. If the feed is personalized, we don't want that. If the content is personalized, maybe it's creating a filter bubble. If there's location being used to personalize, that's high risk. And the reality is we're living in this world where your chatbot kind of doesn't work effectively for you if it isn't a bit personalized by the two things you said previously. So one thing that we're charting out, sort of, you have your age assurance here, okay, now what exactly? Now, well, I've got to deal with the fact that there are a lot of laws that say you now must do this or that, but can we better unpack what are all the different ways personalization is used? What are we worried about? What are all the possible harms? And then can we do a better job at saying, here's what we actually want. We want a youth-appropriate advertising experience. We want a youth-appropriate feed. What kind of feed is good? Is it, what are the harms? Is it that it's going to be too engaging? Is it that it's going to, put me in a narrow spot? Do we have different solutions or better solutions? If I buy a Starbucks coffee and it automatically uses my location to say, here's where you're placing your remote order, right? Is that exactly what we want to turn off? So we're trying to chart that out, and we'll welcome input from many of you as we go forward in that direction. Second quick point, almost every conference that I've been to, privacy, technology, policy, has become an AI conference, and it has taken over the debate. So kudos, because we've talked about a lot of other things, although we've talked about chatbots and AI, but I think the reality is there's some risk that we're solving today's web when every one of us is probably using our phone a bit differently than we were in how we quickly go to an LLM, or we use Google Notebook this, or we use this, or we use that. And when you keep an eye on what's happening now, agentic AI and model context protocol, and the rapid pace that every organization is kind of throwing everything they have, and I don't know, maybe this will all fail, and maybe it'll be the biggest thing in the world, but the web is changing as fast as we've ever seen it change. And are we latching on to today's technology and business models, or how are we thinking about the same concerns we have, but for what is rapidly going to be the world of agentic AI and of LLMs built into the fabric of every toy? And I'll close with just, we're seeing the same reaction, right? In the early days, and I started out at AOL and had teams working on all of the relevant issues that we're talking about here today, and the calls were always ban the social media, ban this, ban that, because of the concerns. The idea that we're banning, not chatbots, that's just a way to deal with an LLM by typing to it, right? There are a million different ways you can interact with an LLM. that are becoming the core of what every person on the internet is using in one shape or another. And so a little bit more nuance so that we are focused on provide the right experience for different age groups, as opposed to if it tries to do something social or emotional. If you're in school and you're using ed tech, the fact that there's some personalization and that you get a different, sorry, you got this wrong, whether or not you're a top student or a struggling student, that's a positive social emotional thing based on some good behavioral science that, if I want you to not feel terrible and go and, work harder and so on and so forth, I might want the ed tech to respond in different ways. So let's do things that are evidence-based as opposed to, knee-jerk change. And also let's recognize that it's just moving so quickly. The benefit of it moving so quickly is maybe we can actually learn a little bit from what we didn't get right the first time and kind of raise our hand and say, hey, this agentic stuff, you haven't built it yet. Where are the controls that are going to make sure that we know about age? Where are the controls that are going to make sure that we know about where the data is going? Where are all the compliance things that we need so we don't need people kind of figuring out how to slap it on once the genie is out of the bottle and the business models are built?
There's so much there. Thank you, Jules. I think that thinking on that, so I want to pick up on one of the things that you said, which is that we are trying to regulate for the web of today, but that it's advancing very quickly. I think that's true. And I also think that a lot of the solutions that we have are the same solutions. Like if you pass a data privacy law, you are helping to figure out a lot of the issues that you have with AI. That is just a fact. And also if we can pass a data privacy law, we can stop talking about it, which would be great, though I would also really like a federal data privacy law as a plug. But I think that to come back to your earlier question, Andrew, with what was it about 2025? I think that what we're really seeing, the main trend to me is that we are trying to solve a not solely technical problem with tech. I think that's what it comes back to. It's like there's so many components to what we're trying to do with online digital safety for young people, for not for young people, that are not actually tech problems, but we are saying that if we figure out age estimation, if we figure out age verification, we will solve all those issues. That's not totally true, right? Like there's a replication of what happens online that also is part of your offline experience. And we are at the same time defunding mental health care in schools. We are also not making sure that we have the right safeguards and securities in place for all people who are using the web. There are some people who are also, I don't know that anyone would not benefit from being able to block someone that they don't want to have interact with them on a specific platform. That is something that can work for most people. But I think that we've kind of tried to your point, Jules tried to kind of be in these little silos where we say, well, if we can solve this, then we'll have solved this specific problem and we won't actually have to address some of the broader social implications of all these things. So I think for me, the main thing with 2025 is that there are components of this that are very much a tech problem that we need to address as a tech problem. There's also a lot of components that are not a tech problem, and I think that if we had a broader approach to it, which is harder to do, right? Part of the reason why we want to solve age estimation, age verification is because it is, in a lot of ways, the solution is you verify someone's age, you build the right spaces so that you can either keep the right people in or keep the wrong people out, have a tailored experience, and then there you go, presto, solved it all, right? But there's a lot more to what's going on online and offline that I think that gets lost in that conversation a little bit.
Thank you for bringing up also another opportunity for us to say that data privacy law would solve a lot. Yeah. For age assurance specifically, we would say that passing a data privacy law lowers the stakes for age assurance, where people would be more likely to give over their data and go through an age check if there were collection, use, retention limitations. So yes, +1 again. Thank you, Jules. And for pointing out the speed of tech making things hard for regulators, how do you get ahead of it? Luckily, we have a regulator on stage, but wanted to say, for Sydney and Jules, who, if anyone, has gotten age assurance regulation right? And for Almudena, why is it Ofcom? Opportunity to plug here.
I think I will say, one of the things I really appreciate about Ofcom, which I was saying earlier, to Almudena specifically, which was nice. I really like any regular that approaches something from what is the problem we're actually trying to solve here, and let's figure out what the evidence base needs to be before we jump into solving it. And so the harms registry, for example, you can tell how much work went into that, and it's a very thoughtful body of work. I think France has done some interesting stuff with ZPK, so zero knowledge proof. I think that's also really important because they're building in privacy by design from the outset too. So anyone who's actually thoughtful about how should we approach this and not age verification will solve all of our problems, so let's pass a bill and ban kids, from, I don't know, whatever age it is, which I don't know if we want to get into the age ban of it all. But, so yes, I appreciate a thoughtful approach.
I think New York's being careful with its AG providing guidance under its law, where it's focused more on setting benchmarks than coming up with sort of specific technologies. I think that's helpful. I think there's some nuance in the AB 1043, because frankly, it was a negotiation and lots of various stakeholders debating. So I think there's some nuance in there. I think that is helpful. The one thing I like in there, although it's a little bit challenging to businesses, it calls for evidence-based sort of measures to deal with some of the challenges. Many of the new state laws on privacy, although they may be welcome, few of them made exceptions for research, to my frustration. Some do, some don't. So for a lot of them, providing data to a researcher, even in a very limited and careful way, to do the sort of research you might want to do about a platform, to know whether or not a particular intervention works or doesn't, is a sale of data with all of the challenges that come with that. And so we have, I think, a good awareness that doing research in this space is hard, right? I can't give one kid the dangerous experience and the other kid the safe experience and then say, oh, look, that one worked, right? But the reality is companies are A/B testing stuff all the time. The only question is whether or not we're going to have researchers, independent, also able to hammer on this and be part of that conversation. And we haven't made that easier. We've made it a bit harder.
So why Ofcom? So I think we need to have a bit of a pinch of humility. I don't think that anybody is getting it right yet. I think that we are all moving forward in hopefully in the right direction. But we are here at a point in time where we are about to implement really big societal change. And that takes a lot of effort. And also, we might need to test and try a few things, and some of them will work and some of them might not work, but we need to really think about what's the evidence behind and how do we go about collecting the evidence. But some of the things that I think Ofcom has got right is that, first of all, I think the case for change has been made very strongly. So we spend a lot of time researching about the experiences of children online and about how they get exposed from very early on to pornography, that the content of the pornography that they get exposed to is ever more extreme. So the evidence is that is 13, the average at which they get exposed to this content, some much earlier. And we've also researched how children in primary education tell us that violent content is unavoidable, and that really cannot be right. Like the case for change is strong. And then when it comes to age assurance, I think that you've mentioned this as well. Age assurance is not conceived as an end in and of itself. It's a means to an end. You need to think, like, if I'm going to age assure, if I'm going to be much more age aware of where my children are, it needs to be for a purpose. And you need to think about, like, what type of experience do we want for children? And I think that makes it a bit more technology resilient, in that actually that is a concept that works regardless of the technology that it applies to. And we've been, when thinking about the type of technology that might be able to meet the standard of highly effective age assurance, we've been technology neutral. We've tried to really not narrow down and lock in the technology of today, but actually to allow for room for technological development.
And thank you for that, especially as it might stand in contrast with some things we've seen in the US, where there is a bit more of an endorsement of one approach or another. And just to flag for the previous bills mentioned, we do, I don't know if you were able to attend, but we do have someone from the New York Attorney General's office here, and they were talking about their work for the Safe for Kids Act, and then also for California was California's or AB 1043. So just for people to look up. I would love to take a question from the audience before we run out of time. So there's been a lot of age assurance talk. Who would like to ask a question?
Oh, brutal guys.
I can keep going, that's fine.
I have a question about the biometrics that you're using, collecting.
You got it.
For example,
Mic right behind you.
big
Live stream.
Oh, live stream.
Yep.
Right. Hi, thank you. I have a question for Ofcom regarding your biometric usage to declare the age of the individual. So for example, in Sweden, each individual is given the right to own their likeness for commercial use. How do you protect the individual for their biometrics not getting out into the general public for commercial use here in America?
Just to be clear, like we don't carry out biometrics of any sort. What we have done is we've published our guidance, and in our guidance, what we say is we list, and it's not a closed list of technologies that have the potential of being highly effective, and as part of that, we list in that list we have facial age estimation. But that is not about collecting biometrics data. It is about using facial age estimation as part of being able to say if someone is over or under a certain age level, and mostly the case is around 18. So to be able to say if someone is over the age of 18 or under the age of 18, we don't expect any of that data or any extra data about the individual, their identity, or any other ID markers to be used as part of that process or kept by the age assurance verification provider.
But it's through facial recognition.
It's not through facial recognition. It's not about recognizing if that Andrew is Andrew and Andrew is over the age of 18. It's about establishing that the person that is trying to access a site is over the age of 18, but it is not about, it's not linked to his ID or his personal information or personal data.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to close with the title of this session of getting back to this. Have we finally arrived? Can we today do effective, accurate, interoperable, affordable, privacy-preserving age assurance? And if not, are we close? What will it take to get us there? And this is for the whole panel.
I think no. I think we're getting closer, which is interesting. I think we still need to come back to the idea of, to my mind, age estimation should be rare and it should be specific. It shouldn't be something that we apply as a broad stroke. I don't think we've necessarily solved that issue first. But I also think that beyond that, the privacy preserving piece is really important, but I think it lowers the risk. And like, so we saw, I don't know how many people following this, but with the Discord breach recently, with a bunch of ID breaches, like that to my mind really illustrates some of the issues that I think are at the core of this. And I think you can't have anything that makes the internet safer if you're also not prioritizing people's data privacy in there as well. And so I think the thing that's really important with age estimation is that there needs to be choice, there needs to be context, there needs to be proportionality. I think we're getting closer to figuring that out, but I also think that, and this conversation has been great, and generally this whole conference, because it's more focused on what are we missing and what is the problem that we're trying to solve, as opposed to just like, we have figured this out, and so let's move forward. But I think like the final point that I'll make is that we really need to be treating kids as independent agents that we want to develop, and not as people who can be locked out of systems and then suddenly magically when they're 18 years old, here you go, like keys to the kingdom. And I think we're making a lot of progress on that, but I'd like to see more.
I'll say yes, but I'm going to actually say it's because we're saying age assurance, which includes a lot of things. And so if indeed we think there are different stages of what I might need that are appropriate for different kinds of services and sites, and if we're ready to apply that sort of tiered risk approach, this is a high-risk service where teens are talking to other people, blah, 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 blah. Yes, we want a high level, sorry about your rights and so forth. This has got to be done in a highly reliable way. This is a more general service, general app. The worst thing that happens is you're going to get like automatically your weather for your location or the local Starbucks near you. Okay, maybe I don't need age, maybe declaration is possible. So I think if we're ready to recognize that there are tiers of risk, and I think the risk assurance framework from Ofcom does a nice job of that, and we use the privacy enhancing technology to minimize the risk of the most intrusive. I really need to know who you are because you're getting into this daycare facility to go do this high risk thing and pick up your kid. If we're ready to tier it and agree to the right risk and the right levels, I think we can do it. If we're going to be applying, intrusive methods to the massive population, we're going to have people flipping it off and freaking out, and we're going to have chaos.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to be brief since we are at time. I would say that it's probably a journey. It's age assurance might not quite be a destination, but just part of a journey, and we are moving really in the right direction. Where I would say that we finally have arrived to the end of an age-blind use of technology. So that I think that we have come to the conclusion that actually when it comes to children need to have different, more supported experiences, and how those look is up for debate. But actually, I think there is quite a lot of consensus that this age-blind use of the internet and technology is probably over.
I love that we had an hour plus of age assurance and came to 3 slightly different conclusions with this question. Fantastic. We'll keep it going another day. Thank you to this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.